go to his doctor, but he wouldn't go. And then yesterday he fell down in the bathtub, and I called 911, and the ambulance took him into the ER, and it turned out he had had a stroke. And I get off the phone, and I'm alone in my bedroom, and then I go into my closet, and I'm just sort of organizing things, and I just start crying alone. And my daughter, Una, comes in, and she goes, "Dad, what's wrong?" And I go, "Well, Grandpa had a stroke." And she says, "Dad, what's a stroke?" And that's when I realized I can't really explain what a stroke is. I took a swing. I mean, I know the bullet points. I go, it's a brain injury, and there's bleeding in your brain. And then it was a lot of free association after that, I was like, it's your brain. Your brain is bleeding, and I'm not sure where the blood was, but I think it was like in the vessels, and they're sort of all in there, but now it's just, it's everywhere, I think. And I mean, in a way, our whole body is sort of filled with blood. This is gallons and gallons of blood all over your body. In a way, we're bleeding at all times. Maybe ask your mom about that. Or Grandpa, but not this week, And so Una goes, is Grandpa Vin going to be okay? And I go, I don't know. I'm going to go home tonight. So that night I drove to Providence, Rhode Island, to the hospital, and I take the elevator up to the 8th floor to the stroke unit, and I see my dad, and he's just a shell of himself. He can't move half of his body, and he can't really speak. And the neurologist came in, and she goes, "Vince, we're gonna do a spinal tap." My dad happens to be a retired neurologist. So from the condition he was in, he suggested a type of spinal tap. He goes, "Guided spinal tap," which is impressive, but also a good example of how controlling my dad is. I'm watching a half-dead neurologist tell a fully alive neurologist how to do her job. I mean, that is next level mansplaining. I mean, that's dead mansplaining. If you don't know the term mansplain, it's when a man explains to a woman something she might understand better than the man. I'm not explaining it to you, I'm conveying it. I am manveying, and it was devastating seeing my dad in this condition because, when I was a kid, I always viewed my dad as larger than life. He was almost like a mythological creature, I just, in a way, I sort of wanted to be my dad, because he knew so much stuff. Like, he was a doctor, and in his free time, he got his law degree. Yeah. That's how much he didn't want to be a dad. He was like, what can I do in these slots of time when I would be parenting? In fairness, we weren't great kids. We always wanted a dad. And he wanted another secondary degree. So our goals were at odds. I never saw that side of my dad, you know. Sometimes when I was a kid, strangers would come up to me, they'd be like, your dad is a great doctor. And I'd be like, all right, you know. From Worcester, Massachusetts, that's how everyone talks. Your dad is a great doctor. I'm like, all right, you know, he's not my dad. I mean, he's not, he is my dad. That was Freudian. I don't know if that'll make it in a special. Whole show's about my dad. He's not my dad. What was that first part where he said it's not his dad? Is this gonna twist into the ending of Chinatown? Well, he wasn't my doctor. Someone came up to me recently. I was walking Una home from school, and they were like, I love your comedy. I was like, oh, thanks. And they look at Una, and they go, your dad's a great comedian. She was like, all right. You know what I mean? And I was like, I know what you mean. And we walk a few blocks. I go, Una, what do you think when people say stuff like that? And she goes, it's a waste of my time. And I was like, that's the meanest thing anyone's ever said to me. And I know Bill Burr. It's very rare that I would see my dad being a doctor. Like, I remember one time I played soccer when I was a kid. I was the goalie. And one time I dove head first for the ball, and I got to it, and then the kid on the other team kicked my head. I know. With the intensity he had intended for the ball. And I don't know the rest of the story. But I have been told that I hopped up and I was like, I'm good. And they took my word for it and they kept me in the game. And about 15 minutes later, I just wander off the field. Onto another field. And my teammates ran over, they go, Mike, are you okay? And I said to them, and I quote, I go, what are we even doing here? And my dad ran onto the field, and he picked me up, and he carried me off, and he drove me home, and he asked me all the questions that doctors ask their patients. What's your middle name? What are the classes you take at school? And I was like, oh, okay, this is what my dad does. And then the other time, when it came up, is that I went to St. Mary's School for grade school in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, and every Friday night we had science club, which is kind of like a mafia front for Catholic school. Like, we believe Jesus turned water into wine, and also there were dinosaurs, you know, and... So every Friday night, it's like a different parent explaining what science has to do with their job. And one night it was gonna be my dad, and I was so nervous. I was like, what's he gonna say? He doesn't know anything about science. And he came in, and he brought his medical tools, and he took them out one by one, and he explained what each of them does. He took out a three-dimensional model of the brain, explained the hemispheres of the brain, and all these kids came up to me afterwards, and they were like, your dad is wicked smart. You have the smartest dad. I was like, yeah, I do have the smartest dad. But how come he didn't explain any of that stuff to me sooner? Because I just didn't see a lot of that, you know. What I would see of my dad was he'd come home from work around 8 o'clock at night, and he would sit in the corner of the living room and read a war novel and scowl. And every now and then, he'd sort of fly off the handle about some little thing. He'd be like, where are my goddamn keys? You know. I'd be like, we gotta find Dad's keys. I spent my whole life looking for those keys. Jumped through a window to get those keys. My dad would not like that joke. So we'd look for the keys, and then my mom would just pray. You know, she'd be like, I'm going to say a prayer to St. Anthony. I was 7. I was like, I don't think this is going to work. We need more concrete tactics to locate the keys. If you don't know the Christian St. Anthony, he's sort of the finding stuff guy, which feels like a bum deal as a saint. Because it's hard to become a saint. You know, you got to perform 3 miracles. They have to verify the miracles. You know, a lot of dark money in that space. A lot of, yeah, I saw it. And then they get canonized if you're lucky. And then chances are you find out like 5 minutes before you die. You know, they're like, great news, you're a saint. You're like, you know. One last thing, you gotta find everybody's keys. You're like, no, and then you're dead. So I'm with my dad.